So even though everything is everything, big air quotes there, is moving to the cloud, we still have a need for virtual machines and or physical machines in our local environment, as well as, in this case, for building a lab to practice. So as you can see, I am on a Windows 11 machine and I'm running the Hyper-V hypervisor. And what I'm going to do is create master disks, which will save me a ton of time. And as I do this video, I'll explain some of the advantages as we create this. So the first thing we're going to do is create a master disk for Windows 11. So I'm going to start by entering a new virtual machine. And you, of course, will name it what you want. But my students are going to be directed to name it with their first initial last name. Then I'm going to call it Windows 11 Master. Okay, and matter of fact, I will call it Windows 11 Master Disk. Always use great naming conventions so that you're very clear as to what the machine is. Okay, now this is not the computer name. This is the name of the new virtual machine that I'm creating. Now, in a production environment, if it's a virtual machine, I tend to name it the same as I plan on naming it within my naming convention. So for me, I have a separate drive that's a really fast SSD, so I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. I'm going to just accept my regular folder here for virtual machines and continue on. So at this point, I'll choose Next. I'm going to do a Generation 2, so I'll choose Next. And then for me, I'm going to give this 4 gig, and I'm going to take off the dynamics so that it's allocating exactly 4 gig to this machine. I'll choose Next. I'm going to set it up with the default switch that I have. So in other videos, I'll talk about switching, but set it up with the default switch. This is going to give it access to the internet so that we can do all the updates and etc. before we do the video. So I'll choose Next. Now at this point, I'm going to limit this down to 60 gigs. Again, these are lab machines, not production machines. I don't need all that allocated space, although this is a dynamic virtual disk. So it's not going to allocate all 60 gig right off the bat. This disk will grow as the need for disk space grows. I'll choose Next. Now at this point, I'm going to go out and grab the ISO file that I have. So I'll pause while I do that. Now I've gone ahead and downloaded these from the Microsoft Azure Free for Student account, which I have access to. So I'm using the current ISO there. So I'll put that in and choose Next. And at this point, it's going to create the virtual machine. So I'll say Finish. Now we're not going to start up the virtual machine right away. As soon as this starts up, we're going to make some changes that we need to make in order to run this. Currently, there's some new updated requirements. So I'm going to right click and go to Settings here. And the first thing I'm going to do is under Security, I'm going to enable the Trusted Platform module. So you're probably familiar with the fact that Windows 11 and Server 2022 now require a TPM chip in order to run. As for processor, we're going to increase that by 2. And I know that I have enough memory here that the system isn't going to balk when I try to do the install. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do while I'm here is checkpoints. I'm going to go ahead and turn checkpoints off. I don't need checkpoints for a master disk. I don't want checkpoints for a master disk. And you can determine whether you want checkpoints in your lab. I will use checkpoints a lot for machines that I'm going to play with that I might mess up, that I want to go back to a previous period in time before I messed it up. For example, I've got some Windows machines that I'll use. I'll inject some malware on it or ransomware. I'll see what happens, and then I can go back to that checkpoint if I choose. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and say Apply and OK. And I'm ready to start up the machine. Now, as I start up the machine, I'm going to move this over here, there we go, and start the machine. I usually can't catch it to boot the OS, the ISO, quickly. There it goes, right? So I missed it, so I got to go Control-Alt-Delete and quickly hit that button, and it's going to start up the process. Now I'm going to pause this video through the hurry up and wait portions. So here we are at the setup screen. I'm going to go ahead and choose next. I'm going to choose install now. And I am going to enter my license key. Now, if you qualify for the Azure Free for Student, you get a license key that you can use here. And then if this is for an educational environment, most likely your instructor has provided a lab key for you to use only for these instructional machines. So I'll go ahead and enter mine and then come back once I'm done. Also, if you don't have a key, you can just simply select to do a trial. I'm going to go ahead and accept the basic license here. I'm going to do a custom install. There is my virtual hard disk that I created. That's where I want to install it. I'll choose next, and it will start the install process. If you'll notice now, the machine has finished the install. It's going to restart. At this point, we'll walk through the basics for setting up this machine. Now, realize that no matter what I do here, when I run the Sysprep, all of these specifics are going to be removed from the machine. When I create my first username and password, it will be removed from the machine. I'm not going to set this up with a Microsoft Live account. I'm going to set it up with a local user. Now, once in a while in doing this process, I'll get an error like a keyboard error, etc. And if you get that error, just retry. That normally does it. If it doesn't, go ahead and restart your virtual machine, and that usually fixes it. At this point, it's going to check for updates and install them. Unfortunately, we're then going to have to go in and install other updates. So again, device name, I'm just going to call this Win11 Master. Again, it doesn't matter because it will be removed from the system when we generalize. We're going to go ahead and set this up for work. Again, I'm not going to create a Microsoft account. I'm going to go into sign in options. I don't want to sign in. I'm going to join domain instead. And then I'll just give it a name. Right now, I'll just give it my name. Again, that's all removed. I'll give it a password, which also will be removed once we generalize the machine. I got to go through these security questions. All I usually do, this is because we're essentially creating a local account. So I'll pick security questions and answer them with what's in there. Again, this is all being removed after the fact of the Sysprep. I'm going to just go ahead and choose all the default settings for privacy. The machine will go through its process of continuing the install. It may even reboot a couple times, so just be patient until the login screen comes up. So here I'm just going to go ahead and accept the default size that it wants to use in the aspect of monitor. Notice I'm now, it'll go ahead and resize this to a more appropriate size. Now I have a 4K screen, so consequently, it's making these virtual machines pretty small because of the resolution that I accepted. You'll notice now it gets a little bit bigger. I can clearly see what's going on. Now at this point, what I need to do is start always with updates. So I'm going to go ahead and update this machine. And because this is an introductory to Windows and primarily to server for my class and Windows client, we're going to utilize the graphical user interface both for Windows 11 and for the server. However, what I'll do when I post-produce this video is I will put in the PowerShell scripts that you could use to do the updates as well, along with a few notes on what you need to do in the way of security settings to change those so that you can. However, keep in mind, you are going to want to learn these PowerShell commands. Hopefully, you're learning those within the context of your learning environment. And if not, make sure you find and do the work to learn the PowerShell commands. They're hugely time efficient savings. It's how we're automating systems today. And if you're playing in a cross environment where you have Linux, it's great to learn these for Linux as well. So we'll go ahead and pause while it does the updates. Now let me note that you're going to most likely have to go through multiple instances of running the updates. It depends on how old your ISO image is. If you notice, it's installing some updates now. If you're utilizing the PowerShell commands to do this, please note that I've had some challenges with like the quarterly updates, you know, the 22H cumulative updates, utilizing in PowerShell. But simply, at least at this point, if you don't want to troubleshoot that, which I would recommend you try to do, you can come back to the graphical user interface and install them there. So at this point, I'm going to wait till I get a install where I go ahead and say update and it tells me I'm completely up to date. Now, as you can see, it's going to want me to restart the machine. Again, I'll restart, I'll do this process. Now, why are we doing this to create a master image? This is why. You can see how much time, and of course I'm pausing this video, but it's taking a lot of time to create these this master image by doing this sequence of updates. So this saves me a ton of time when I want to instantiate a machine quickly, and I'll show you in another video the value of these master disks. So now that I've installed all of the updates and you notice it is completely updated, I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now I'm going to go through a process that, by the way, isn't going to produce a lot of value here, but depending on at what point in an operating system lifecycle you're doing this, there could be a lot of value. And what it is I'm going to go ahead and do a disk cleanup. So I'm coming out here to the C drive, I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to properties, and I'm going to do a disk cleanup. Now again, we might not see much change, but if you notice, currently I've got 20.2 gig. Now if you're doing this and you had to install a major version, okay, version change, you would get that under C, you would get that windows.old file, which is going to be huge, right? So because I'm not using this in production, by the way, and also because I know that my operating system's going to be stable, if I know that, I would right click and delete that Windows old, or even better, I'll go do a disk cleanup. So here's how I'll do that. I'll do the disk cleanup here and get that started. Now I'm going to go ahead and select everything here. I don't need to worry about anything. You'll see that this is only going to get rid of about 308. You know, I could clean up system files too, so let's do that. And this is going to give me a little bit more. Again, you know, if I had done that major versioning update, then I'm going to see, you know, a big file within here to get rid of. So that's why I'm showing you this. So I'll say, okay, I'll delete the files. It'll do the cleanup. I'll pause while it does that. Now, once that completes, we're going to go ahead and actually shut down the machine so that we can compact the virtual hard disk. Now, this is where that value comes in. Again, only if you've you know, had some big updates or some other things, or you've installed additional software, you want to clean up those install files, whatever the case may be, those still reside. Even though we did a disk cleanup, it still seems to reside in the virtual disk. So what we do is we come out here to settings, and because the machine's down, we can modify settings. So you'll notice I'll go here. Let's go ahead and do a quick inspect. I'm going to drag this over so we can inspect this. So we can see, you know, the current file size 14.32 gig. I'm going to go ahead and edit this. I'm going to choose next. I'm going to choose to compact that disk. Next. I'll finish. Now, this will be a pretty quick process, unhandled exception, and continue. So I have to say, not a big fan of Windows 11 and the start of this. I've got this error here. What I'll have to do is deal with this error, and I'm going to stop this video at this point, and then I'll come back with a summary at the end. So I wasn't able to even close that error with Task Manager, so I had to completely shut down and restart the machine. We'll try this process again here real quick. So I'll go ahead and choose compact. I'm going to compact that. I'll choose finish. And you notice it compacted the disk. Now, if I choose inspect again and drag this over, we're only going to see just a tiny bit. But again, this is hugely valued, a valuable process in making this disk smaller if you have gone ahead and done a bunch of updates. So at this point, I'm going to choose OK. I'm going to restart the machine. We'll come back and finish this process. So again, at this point, we're ready to run Sysprep. You could go out and do some research on how to run Sysprep via the PowerShell. We're going to just do it graphically. We'll open up File Explorer. We'll go into the C drive. We'll go into Windows. We're going to come down here and find the System32 folder, and then come down until we find the Sysprep. There's the Sysprep. We'll double click that and we'll click on Sysprep. Now we want to make sure that we choose generalize. I'm going to choose the out of the box experience. Okay. I don't need an audit mode. So out of the box experience. If you've ever again purchased a new Windows machine and you've got it, you started it up for the first time, it walked you through the process of configuring the operating system, choosing names, etc. We're not going to reboot. I want to go ahead and shut down at this point because then I'll have this to use. I will go ahead and stay on while it does this and then show you how we can utilize this to build many virtual machines very quickly. So as you can see, my virtual machine has shut down. Sysprep has successfully run. I'm going to open up Folder Explorer here, File Explorer. I'm going to go down into where those virtual machines are saved, which is on my D data file. So you'll go to wherever you save those. Here is the master disk we created, and in here is a virtual hard disks folder. So this is the virtual hard disk. Simply all I have to do with the machine shut down is I can right click, copy this, I can paste it, I can rename it, and just simply come over and do new virtual machine, run through this process, and when I get to that point that it says use an existing virtual hard disk, I would use it. Now, keep in mind, as you do this, go ahead and make sure that you create a good solid folder structure for your virtual machines. If you notice, I have a virtual machines folder on a drive. I make sure it creates a folder and thus a subfolder. So when you're doing this with an existing, I would create, this, make sure it goes into here just to keep everything tidy and neat. I hope this video helps you. Have a great day. Look forward to seeing you in the next one where we build a master disk for Server 2022. Take care.